Hello YouTube audience, and welcome to yet another episode of Game On. I know it's been a while since our last one, and I've missed you. So I'm glad we have this time together to chat about games. I'm Todd Kerpelman. I'm on the developer relations team on Google Play Games, and in real life my forehead is not this shiny, I swear. It's the lighting in the studio. Anyway, we're going to move on and talk about this week's episode, which is the Play Games Half Birthday Party. If you weren't aware, Play Game Services launched at Google I/O 2013, which means it's just about 6 months old as of today. So we're celebrating with the party, except that I'm the only one here. Wolf is out and Dan's gone and Bruno's gone. So it's me here alone, sort of like all my other birthday parties. Anyway, Dan, my producer's here, so that's good. So it's double the size of most of my previous birthday parties, so that's kind of nice. Anyway, what better way to kick off a birthday party than with some stats, huh? I might explain why no one showed up to my other birthday parties. Anyway, we're at 2,000 plus games that have integrated Play Game Services. That's not bad for 6 months, and that number is continuing to grow. We are very excited about that. So yay, there's our stat for the week. This birthday, we're going to be giving the gifts to you. A little twist there. In terms of updates, so there's a newest version of the Games SDK. If you are using Android, I believe it's like SDK number 13, but I'm not quite sure about that. I'm the iOS guy. You Android folks are on your own. But you can download this, and the version of Play Services has already been pushed out to devices everywhere. So feel free to start using it. If you're an iOS developer, you can download SDK version 1.2 from the downloads page. And what is in these latest and greatest SDKs, you ask? I'm glad you asked. It includes things like Score Tag. This is basically a 64 or up to 64 character URI safe string that you can submit along with any score that you send down to our service. In case you're wondering what URI safe is, I went and looked up the RFC, and basically it's alpha characters, digits, and 4 different punctuation marks. And you can basically create any kind of string you want and send that down with your score data to our servers. And why would you want to do that? Well, there's a number of reasons. Partly, you might want to use it for metrics. Maybe you just are kind of curious as to how people are achieving these high scores. And so you might find out, what level they were playing at, or what power-ups they were using, or what boosts they, had enabled when they managed to, receive this really high score. And so you can submit that along with the score and analyze that later. If you, as a developer, just do a score.list on your public leaderboards, you'll be able to get the score tag information along with the scores that get sent down. You could use it to create a hash. Think about if you take that score, maybe add on some other kind of string that's semi-secret. It'll be on the client, so it won't be completely secret, but hard to dig up. Create a hash on that. You can then use that as sort of a nice way to verify that the score that is being sent is legitimate. You could also link to a database entry. If, say, you've got a game that is primarily server-based, your server is sort of the primary keeper of truth, but you still want to submit scores to our service, you can basically add a link to a unique ID within your server database that you could then use later to kind of cross-check and verify that these scores are legitimate. And finally, you could use it to display custom user messages. Maybe if you've got your own way of displaying leaderboards within the game, you might want to have users, pick their own kind of, icon or taunt message or something like this. I have a comment here to say be very careful with this. You don't want to just take any kind of user submitted data, that might be out of your control. Lord knows what kind of stuff your users are saying. In general, again, data created by the client, you should always kind of view it with suspicion and do some verification. So I'd recommend, rather than letting users type in anything they want, have a list of pre-selected messages that your user could pick. You can kind of view that later and show that in your scoreboard of kind of the taunt or the thing that your user wants to say. Anyway, this could also be used in conjunction with some of those management REST calls that we talked about last episode to write your own anti-cheating script. So think about it this way. Let's say you use that hash implementation that we talked about in the previous slide, right? You create a hash of the user score before it gets sent down to our service. Then what you can do on your own, on your side is, you can call it scores.list, which will get an entire list of the user scores along with all the score tags. Iterate through those and check out those tags, right? Generate your hash on your side, see if that equals the hash that you see in the score tag. And if it doesn't match, if something looks suspicious, you can call players.hide to hide that player from the public leaderboard. Combine all of this, make it a script that your customer service person runs, once or twice a day, and you've got a very cheap and easy way to keep your leaderboards clean. So definitely consider this option. Experiment around, see what you can do. I think this can be really useful. Next, we are giving you the ability to set absolute achievement progress. This is something that's available right now on Android and web only. We will be making progress on other platforms soon. And what this means is basically, if you recall right now, we have a way that you can submit progress towards incremental achievements by essentially kind of submitting a delta, right? So you would say, hey, this achievement where I have to, shoot 100 spaceships, the user just, shot 4 of them. And so on our service, we would say, okay, their total is now 4. And then you'd say, oh, okay, now they shot 8. And we'd say, okay, the total is now 12. You'd say the user, blew up 3 more. We would record that as 15, and so on and so forth. All of the work to keep track of this data is being done on our servers. However, some developers would rather keep track of that information on the client. And so we have added this call. It's the set achievement steps call that basically lets you submit the absolute amount of achievement progress you want to make towards unlocking an incremental achievement. So you would say, okay, the user has, blasted a total of 2 spaceships. And then they've blasted a total of 7 and 15 and so on. You'll notice in that last row there in the table, we submit 18 and the service keeps the last entry of 20. Basically, if you submit a number that is less than the progress that we've already recorded, that will not go down. So it will basically be kind of, you can never lose progress by calling a set achievement steps call. So this is useful, one, if you do want to have your client be the main source of truth for incremental achievements. It's also very useful for kind of syncing achievement progress, right? Like if a user is signed into services, but they have been playing on your game for a while already, and you're not quite sure how to sync up their progress between anything you've recorded locally and what's already on the service, this is a cheap and easy way to do it. You just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to trust my client. I know that the user has, blasted 43 spaceships on the client. I'll just send that down to the server, and that will make sure that the server is now in sync with your client. We have added the ability to call some of these V1 management calls from the client on iOS and of course web. So what does this mean? This means that within your game you can now create your own little QA view controller. And within there, you can make some calls to, for instance, here, reset scores for that particular player on a particular leaderboard. You've got your QA person who has managed to get some amazing high score, possibly by finding a bug in your game, and you want to make sure they can kind of reset and try again, see if they can reproduce the bug. They can call this reset call to reset that score. We also have a similar call to reset an achievement. This is especially helpful for testing, right? You've got your QA person that is trying to earn an achievement. They do it once. If they want to try and do it again, the easiest way would, again, from within your app, set up something that can make this call directly. And we also have another method to reset all achievements. Again, very useful for testing. Remember again that these calls only work if your tester account is listed in this testing access part of the developer console. So do make sure that your QA people are listed here because they will be the only ones that are allowed to make these V1 management calls. Finally, there's a few other fixes here and there. On the iOS side, we have made some fixes to the widgets so that they work properly in iOS 7. There were some crashing issues before. Sorry about that. Everything should be good now in iOS 7. We've also added some fixes so that the library behaves better if you're using that as well as Google Analytics. On the Android side, there's been a number of fixes around multiplayer. Even if you're not going to make use of any of these other features that we've talked about, if you do have a multiplayer game, I strongly encourage you to recompile your app with the latest SDK, because there are a number of multiplayer fixes that have been made that I think will make your game better. And finally, for those of you who can't get enough of me and are wondering, hey, what happened to those iOS screencasts that you were doing? Don't worry, there's more on their way eventually. I'm still around. I just got pulled off onto a top secret project for a couple weeks. But hopefully now that that's over and I have a little more time to think about games again, I'll be getting back into the screencasts, which would be good. Except that my hard drive's full. Video files, it turns out, they take up a lot of space. So I guess as soon as I delete some of those Steam games that are taking up all my hard drive space, I'll go and make some more screencasts. So thanks very much, developers. I'm going to go off and I guess sit in the corner and drink like all my other birthdays. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.